I'm starting over in Minecraft Hardcore for the first time ever, and in this series I want to take my builds to the next level, creating the most beautiful and immersive builds I've ever made and transforming a world that feels truly connected, all whilst on one life. So if you're excited for the journey, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to help the channel grow, and with that, it's time to load up a brand new hardcore world and get started. And we're in a brand new world, a brand new start. So same as with any new world, we need to get going with the basics right away, especially as this is a hardcore world. I previously only ever played on survival, so I've always had that safety net of knowing that I can just respawn if I die, but not this time. So we're going to start first by getting ourselves a crafting table and then crafting up our initial set of wooden tools so that we can actually get started. But if there's one thing you should know about me in this game is that I'm a bit of a coward, especially when I know that I only have one life. So what we're going to do next is we're actually going to make ourselves a little bit of a hidey hole, sort of like a little starter area in the side of this hill, so that when the nighttime approaches that we'll actually have somewhere safe to sort of ride it out and make the most of the time that we actually have, rather than just sort of rushing to get a bed straight away. So we're going to get in here a crafting table and a furnace, and then we're just going to light it up to make it safe. But what we're also going to really need to be mindful of is our food supply. So what I'm going to do now is actually gather up a few fish, since we have a river right next to us, which is perfect. And this should keep us going until we have a bit more of a renewable source. But after what felt like no time at all, the first night was upon us. So I then retreated into our little starter hole and closed ourselves in for the night. So with the darkness now surrounding our world, it's time to actually head down into the mines to start gathering up some much needed resources. So I'm going to start first with copper, because we can now make use of all the new copper tools and armor, which is going to be a real game changer in this sort of early stage of the game and not having to rely on iron quite so soon. But after what felt like no time at all, we'd actually hit the first day in our hardcore world. But anyway, with that, we can gather up some iron so that we can get some iron tools, and then we can head down into the very depths of this world to start gathering up our first diamonds. Mining session completed, and I actually managed to find a reasonable amount of diamonds to begin with, so I'm going to keep them safe for the time being until we actually need them. And I also found a whole load of iron, so I was able to upgrade my armor straight away to iron armor. So as much as the copper was useful, we were already moving on. But anyway, with that mining done and out of the way, it's time for us to actually start exploring a little bit more in our world. And I also want to get ourselves a bed. So unfortunately, that means we're going to have to say goodbye to some sheep on this world in order to give ourselves sleep privileges. And I'm going to gather up one of these orange tulips so that I can actually dye our new bed orange, because that is basically my favorite color. And with that, that means basically we can actually explore the world a bit more freely now without fearing the night. And right along from the spawn area, there is actually a village. So this is going to be perfect. And we're definitely going to try and make use of some villages in this world. But for now, I'm going to start by looting up some of the hay bales so that we can get ourselves some bread. And then we'll make our way up into the main village area and see what we can find. I always kind of feel bad for the villagers that they're always having their homes raided, but not quite enough to actually make use of their loot, because I am definitely going to steal their books so that I can make our own enchanting setup back at our starter area. And we are also going to make use of the villages that we actually have here. We're going to give them a future home. So I just need to first keep some safe inside here, because knowing my luck, they'll probably get killed or something by a zombie. So let's get them safe and sound in their home here. We'll box them in. And I really need a couple, well, I'll say 2 or 3 tops, because then we can breed them up when we actually need them. And I think this will probably be the first time in probably like 2 or 3 years that I've actually started to think about making use of villages. I've normally actively avoided them, but with this being a single player hardcore world, I think it's going to be essential that we make use of every sort of resource that we can get access to. So keeping our villagers safe here and making use of them at a later point in time, I think is just going to be invaluable for us. But whilst we're here, one thing that's really blowing me away in this world is just how beautiful this sort of surrounding terrain is. This seed has got to be one of my favorite ones to date. And just kind of seeing the cherry grove area over there just opposite from this village is really making me think that that could actually be a perfect location for a proper little starter base. So what I actually really want to do now is actually abandon my little starter hall or in the side of the hill and actually start getting moved over to this area because I think it's just going to be perfect for us. And thankfully, we are actually pretty well connected to the area with these waterways. So I think what I'm actually going to do is make use of the chest boats for the first time so that we can actually transport all of our starter resources over. There's just a little stretch here that I need to actually open up to connect them with the main waterway. And then we're just basically going to start clearing out all of our resources into these chest boats and then get them moved over to the banks of the lower area beneath the cherry grove. And then we can kind of figure out where we want to go from there. Starter Hall, it was brief, it was short and sweet, but you served us well, and it is now time to hop in our chest boat and start transporting our goods across to the new area. And we just need to do a few more of these trips just to get everything moved over. All of our belongings are now moved over, and I really can't say this enough, but this whole area is just so beautiful, and it is leaving me feeling really inspired. So I want to actually first do a little bit of health and safety in our area here so that we can avoid any kind of unexpected visitors sort of catching us off guard, because it is inevitably going to happen at some point. So if we can just at least light it up a little bit, it's probably going to be a good idea. And also, whilst we are here, we need to fill in this little hole area that's sort of sitting in between the sort of 2 points on this sort of upper ledge area, because I am undoubtedly probably going to fall down it at some point, and it would be nothing worse than losing our hardcore world to a stupid fall death. But anyway, with that filled in, this is actually making me think that this could be a pretty good pond at some point. So that's something for us to think about later on. Being so close to a village actually has another advantage, and that is that we actually get cats spawning. So I think I'd actually really like to get ourselves our first pet in this world, and cats happen to be my favorite animal in real life. So it's going to be really fitting that we find one now for our first pet. And now that name tags are now also super easy to craft in this game, now that they've updated to make them craftable, I'm definitely going to go ahead and actually get ourselves crafted one up now, and also get ourselves a anvil so that we can actually name our new cat. And I'm actually going to call her Ellie after my real life cat. So then it seems rather fitting that we have our companion both in real life and in our new starter area, really. So this is going to be perfect as we get settled into our new home. The one problem that I always have on any kind of new Minecraft world is that I find it can actually be quite overwhelming to kind of keep on top of the entire list of things that you kind of need to tackle to get yourself fully sort of set up. And especially with this being a hardcore world, the pressure is on even more so. So what we need to do now is we need to start preparing for a proper enchanting setup, and I need to actually get ourselves a little herd of cows in here so that we can get a good renewable source of leather so that we can aim towards the full level 30 enchanting setup. A few minutes later, and we are now in a position where we can actually craft ourselves up our first diamond pick, and I have an initial basic enchanting setup. It's not quite a level 30 setup yet, but we have enough just to give ourselves a basic enchantment on our pickaxe. But if there's one thing that is becoming increasingly clear, is this is going to directly lead on to our next challenge, and that is XP levels. We currently have no means to actually gather up any more, so that's going to really hinder our abilities to actually enchant up our load of tools and armor. But thankfully, in a sign that our new home was really meant to be, it turned out that actually beneath our whole area in the deep slate layers, there was actually a scaly spawner sort of sitting right there, ready for us. So this is going to be perfect. Now, it goes without saying this is going to be pretty dangerous. A shot from a skeleton at the moment, it does me quite a bit of damage without any kind of enchantments on my armor. So we're going to have to be really careful in clearing out this area. And yeah, I am nervous. scaly spawner farm now constructed, and this now finally takes us one step closer to being able to get fully geared up. So what we need to do now is actually grind away for a little bit to gather up the much needed levels, and then we'll be able to head over to our cattle and unfortunately say goodbye to some of our cows. And with that, we'll be able to craft up the remaining bookshelves that we actually need to add to our enchanting setup. And then we're just going to go ahead and see if we can get fortune onto our pickaxe. And once we've got that, we can basically go ahead and go on a proper mining session to basically gather up as many diamonds as we can to hopefully get ourselves a full set of diamond armor and of course the remaining tools. Great success, so I now have way more diamonds than I probably actually need, so at any rate, it means we can actually go ahead and craft up our very first set of diamond armor so we can swap out our current iron set. And this is going to set ourselves up nicely, but what I've decided to do now is take a very small detour into the nether because I want to gather up a couple of blocks of soul sand so that we can actually make a proper water elevator going up and down from our skelly spawner farm, because it's obviously a long way underground and I have no easy way to kind of get back up again after I've initially dropped down. So this is going to be like the final little piece just to make this skelly spawner farm nice and accessible so that we can gather up pretty much all of the levels that we actually need, and then we can actually get back to the grind and go ahead and enchant all of our new armor and our new tools. Possibly my favorite thing in any new world is the exploring of the unknown, and now that we have the much needed confidence given from our armor now being fully enchanted, it was time to head off into the world to start gathering up the resources that we're going to need for our eventual starter house. So I started collecting up some jungle wood, tamed some parrots, chopped down some spruce wood, foraged up some berries and natural resources, chopped down some dark oak, panicked, lost my parrots to the powdered snow and almost lost my horse in the process as well. Panicked and almost lost my horse and my own life, this time to a gorge. Tamed up some new parrots like nothing had ever happened. Collected up some moss. Collected up some calcite and then made my way back to base so that we could actually start crafting up and preparing all the resources that we need ready to start constructing our new starter house so that we can move out of our little temporary area. Everything is now all crafted up and ready to go, so let's get building for the very first time in our new world. Well, it's official. I am feeling absolutely chuffed to bits right now. I am very happy with how it came out, and I definitely think this fits this area much better than our old area. And inside then, it's quite humble, so we have our little ground floor area here, so it's nothing too crazy, anything like that, but we have a little bit of space to work with. So we definitely need to think about some interior design, but we'll tackle that a little bit later on. And then on the second floor, we have where we're going to be putting in our bedroom, and then we have this balcony. And this balcony, I think, is going to be perfect to kind of look out over everything as our world starts to develop around us. But as it is, the landscape by itself is already looking pretty nice. And then finally, at the very top, we have a little attic space up here. So we haven't really got too much space to work with, but I think we can probably use it just for some general storage space, just so we don't clutter up the rest of our house. But yeah, I'm really happy with how this came out, and you'll have to let me know down in the comments what you think, but I definitely now want to start thinking about what we can do about the interior. So I think I really just need to sort of stop procrastinating and just really just go for it. And well, full disclosure, like interiors aren't really my strong suit, so I'm going to be doing a lot of trial and error in this to try and figure out what actually looks okay and what doesn't. And especially as we have fairly limited space, we kind of have to get a little bit creative, but I think it's now starting to come together quite nicely. It's amazing what you can do when you actually put your mind to it. That ended up being way more fun than I actually thought it would be, considering I don't normally do interiors in any of my builds. I think that came out pretty nicely. But anyway, what we need to do now is we need to turn our attention to the exterior of our house, and we have a little bit of tidying up to do. So I want to start adding in a bit of a winding dirt path, kind of leading on from the entrance of our house all the way up to this start of the cherry blossom grove, because that's where I eventually want to start building in a stable for our horse so that we can move him out of the cow pen. Next, I want to carry on where we actually left off earlier when we filled in this little area of land here, because I don't know about you, but this whole area just screams out pond to me. So I'm going to spend some time now and start transforming this into something that's hopefully going to really help bring the whole area to life and really start to make the area feel a lot more immersive. And I have really enjoyed doing a lot more landscaping of late. In my last world, I really did push the boundaries of what way up to my comfort zone and really started to sort of try a lot of new things, particularly in sort of like landscaping aspects of things. So I am having a lot of fun right now, and I'm definitely at the point where I feel a lot more confident to just kind of go with the flow of it, because it's one of these things that you can't really plan too much, and that is the joy of it. You can just have a load of fun just kind of placing blocks and trying to see what works and what doesn't. I'm really happy with how the pond came out, and honestly this area is really starting to come together really quite nicely now, and it's gradually filling out. But the next thing that I want to do is actually now turn my attention to my poor horse who's been stuck in the midst of all of our cattle, and I want to start building in a stable so that we can move him into a home closer to ours. And then it will then, as I said, join up with the path that we constructed in, and I think this looks a lot better. Like nice and humble, nothing too crazy, but I think this is perfect and it fills the space nicely. And now I'm going to start filling in the remaining gaps outside of our house. So I'm going to add in a little bit of a well here above the entrance to our skelly spawner farm. So that's going to be a nice little feature on the landscape. And then for the bulk of the area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start planting in some wheat fields, because you can't have a starter base without some form of crops growing. And once this is fully developed and all grown, I think this is actually going to look really good and kind of make like a nice sort of like walkway as the path sort of winds through it up to our house. And then sort of directly by the house, sort of either side, what I actually want to do is collect up some orange and red tulips. And then I'm going to start planting in a load sort of like directly next to our house. And this is, I think, going to add in a really nice pop of color. I really kind of like break things up a little bit. So I think this looks really good, and it kind of really frames our house. We'll then add in some hedgerows with the azalea leaf blocks, because they are my favorite. And I think they really help to break things up a little bit and just generally blend in the scenery together a little bit more. So all in all, I'm really happy with how it's all come together, and I think now this area is really starting to feel a lot more immersive, and I'm definitely loving walking up and down our new pathway leading up to our house. But with all of that now, it's fair to say I think we really have had the perfect start. We're fully geared up, we're set up with the basics, and we have ourselves a starter base. So I am super excited to see what we'll be able to build in the next episode. But with that, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you later. Bye bye.